My dear listeners, this is an original sci-fi story I wrote for you. If you'd like to support me, just subscribe to the channel. It really helps the growth. The diplomatic summit on Station Verith 9 had gone well, by any reasonable measure. 3 trade agreements initialed, 1 territorial dispute quietly shelved, and a minor incident involving a Vakran delegation member and a vending machine resolved without casualties. Petra Vasic, humanity's newest cultural attaché, considered it a personal victory. She was therefore in a generous mood when she agreed to watch the cubs. There were 6 of them this time, a younger cohort than the ones Juno Hale famously supervised, their scales still carrying the soft translucency of early development. The eldest, a female named Orith, had silver-green markings along her crest that the briefing notes indicated suggested tactical intelligence. The youngest, a tiny male called Brix, was the approximate size and density of a fire hydrant and had spent the first 20 minutes of Petra's custody attempting to bite through a load-bearing wall. He had been redirected. They were currently touring Petra's temporary quarters on the station's civilian level, which she was beginning to think had been a mistake. Vakran cubs processed new environments by touching everything, and Petra's quarters contained, among other things, a tablet, 3 mission-critical files in physical binder form, a diplomatic gift she hadn't yet catalogued, and a small canvas bag of personal items she'd packed in a hurry and hadn't yet unpacked. It was from this bag that the rubber duck emerged. She hadn't meant to bring it. It had been wedged in the corner of the bag since her last home leave, a relic of her niece's most recent birthday party. Bright yellow with a small painted orange beak and the slightly vacant expression common to all rubber ducks throughout human history. She discovered it when Brix, conducting an unsanctioned inspection of the bag's contents, dragged it out by his teeth and deposited it on the floor in front of him. He looked at it. It looked back in its way. Brix raised one clawed forefoot and brought it down on the duck with the confident force of a creature that had been trained since birth to subdue prey. The duck compressed under his weight and then, as his foot shifted, sprang back to shape and emitted a single clear, indignant squeak. Brix leapt approximately 2 feet backward. The other 5 cubs spun to face him with the instantaneous coordinated alertness of predators detecting a threat signal. Orith had dropped into a low stance, her crest flattened, her silver-green markings pulsing faintly. The 2 middle cubs had their claws extended. Even Brix, now pressed against the far wall, had his teeth bared, though his expression was complicated by the fact that he appeared to be more startled than aggressive. Petra froze with her hand halfway to the duck. "It's fine," she said carefully. "It's not, it's a toy. It makes a sound when you press it. It's for children." The cubs did not relax. Orith's gaze moved from Brix to the duck and back. Her crest lifted incrementally. "It called out," she said. "It's compressed air. There's a small chamber inside and when it's rubber. It's not alive. It just makes a noise when you squeeze it." "It called out," Orith repeated, with the patient firmness of someone declining to be redirected by technical detail, "when the smallest and least experienced of our clutch placed pressure upon it." She paused. "It did not call out before. There wasn't any pressure before." Orith looked at her steadily. "It recognized him," she said. Petra opened her mouth. She closed it. She looked at the duck. The duck, in its characteristically unhelpful way, offered nothing. Brix had recovered his composure by now and crept back toward the object with the exaggerated caution of someone who absolutely had not just been startled by a bath toy. He lowered his snout to within a few centimeters of the duck's painted face and sniffed with great concentration. Then he looked up at Petra. "Why does it smell like this?" "Rubber. Synthetic material. They're usually made for bathing. Human young play with them in water." "In water," Orith repeated. This appeared to mean something to her. "An aquatic herald." "It's not a herald. It's a—" "From the water realm," said one of the middle cubs, whose name Petra's notes rendered as Tesk. His scales were a deep oceanic blue that seemed appropriate, she thought irrelevantly, to the theological turn the conversation was taking. "Where vision is obscured, where hunting is different. It comes from below and it speaks to those it deems worthy. It deems nobody worthy. It has no capacity for." "Brix made it speak," Orith said. Every cub in the room looked at Brix. Brix, to his credit, maintained his dignity, though his pale scales had taken on a slightly warm flush that Petra suspected was the Vakran equivalent of embarrassed pride. "It could have called out for any of us," Tesk observed, not unkindly. "It called for him." Petra picked up the duck. She held it up between two fingers, squeezed it firmly, and it squeaked with cheerful immediacy. "See? It calls for anyone. Calls for me. It has no preferences. It is a piece of molded rubber with a small hole in the—" She stopped, because all 6 cubs were staring at her with expressions she had learned, over 3 months in this posting, to read as profound significance. Ortha's crest had come fully upright. Even Brix had straightened. "You made it speak also," Orth said slowly. "Brix made it speak. You made it speak." She paused. "We must determine if it speaks for all, or only for the worthy." "It speaks for all," Petra said firmly. "Categorically. No exceptions." "Then we must test this." Before Petra could formulate a response, Orth stepped forward, extended one claw with surgical precision, and pressed the very tip against the duck's midsection. The duck squeaked. Orth held very still for a moment. Then she stepped back and looked at Tesk. He came forward and pressed 2 claws down. Squeak. He stepped back. The next cub, a quiet female named Vresi, whose scales were the mottled gray-green of river stones, placed her entire palm flat against the duck's surface and pressed. Squeak. She looked at Petra with an expression that Petra's instincts, honed by months of diplomatic work, identified as meaningful. "It speaks for all of us," Vresi said. "Yes," Petra said. "That's what I—" "Then it carries no judgment." Vresi tilted her head. "It does not select. It does not refuse. All who press, it answers." She paused. "This is not the behavior of a herald. This is the behavior of an equal." The room was quiet for a moment. "Equal," Orth repeated, as if tasting the word. Petra sat down. She did not do so intentionally. Her knees made the decision and her body followed, and she found herself on the edge of her bunk holding a rubber duck while 6 Vakran cubs conducted a philosophical seminar around her. "Among our people," Orth said, in the careful, deliberate register that indicated she was translating a concept that didn't move easily between languages. "A herald speaks only for the clutch mother or the war chief. To receive the call of a herald is to receive recognition from above. To be denied the call is to be judged unworthy. This is how rank is known. This is how the young warrior understands where they stand." She looked at the duck. "But this thing answers all who press it. Chief and cub alike. Decorated warrior and the smallest hatchling who has not yet made a kill." She paused. "It carries a different message." "It carries no message," Petra tried. "It has no. The message is sameness," Tesk said quietly. He wasn't looking at the duck anymore. He was looking at some middle distance that Petra suspected was not actually in the room. "In the great hunt we are not equal. The strong rise, the weak fall. This is correct. This is how the clutch survives. But the herald of sameness says," he paused. "It says there is a moment before the ranking. A moment when all who breathe share one thing." He picked up the duck gently, held it between both palms the way one might hold something fragile, and squeezed. Squeak. "The same voice answers us," he said. "All of us." Nobody spoke. Petra looked at the duck. She thought about her niece, who was 7 years old and had thrown the duck at her brother during the birthday party, and then laughed so hard she fell off her chair. She thought about the concept of diplomatic breakthroughs. She thought about how thoroughly the academy had failed to prepare her for any of this. "May we keep it?" Brix asked. Petra blinked. "The duck. To show the clutch mother," Orth said. "She will want to understand the herald of sameness. She has young clutch members who—" Orth paused, and her voice shifted into a register that, even filtered through the translator chip, carried something unmistakably tender. "There are hatchlings who are slow, who do not rank as quickly as others. The clutch mother has worried." She looked at Petra steadily. "The herald of sameness will not solve this. But it might be something they hold. When the ranking feels heavy." Petra looked at the duck for a long moment. The duck, which had been manufactured in a small plant outside of Bratislava for approximately 40 cents and was designed for children aged 6 months and older, regarded the middle distance with serene indifference. "Yes," Petra said. "You can keep it." She handed it to Orith, who received it with both hands. On her way out of the quarters an hour later, after the cubs had been collected by their guardian and Petra had filed the day's notes on her tablet, she paused in the doorway and looked at the spot on the floor where the duck had been. Her communicator buzzed. "Juno Hale, Vasic. I just got a requisition request forwarded from Vakran High Command. They want to procure, and I'm quoting directly here, the small yellow water oracle of affirming sameness, in quantities sufficient for distribution to every hatchling nursery in the empire." Petra typed back, "How many nurseries?" A pause. 17,000. Petra leaned against the doorframe. Also, Juno continued, "They've asked whether the object requires salt water or fresh water to activate. I have no idea what to tell them." Petra thought for a moment. "Tell them it works in any water," she typed back. "It doesn't actually require water at all, but I think it's better if they use water. It'll feel more significant." Another pause. "Longer this time. You've been in this job for 3 months, Juno replied. "Yes," said Petra. "You're going to be fine," said Juno. Petra pocketed her communicator and walked down the corridor toward the debriefing room, where 3 ambassadors were waiting to discuss the trade agreements, and where absolutely nothing was going to be declared sacred, and where she would sit through 2 hours of procedural language and think about a 7-year-old laughing so hard she fell off her chair. It was, she thought, a reasonable way to spend a Tuesday.